Thinking about self-publishing and don't know where to start? Join the Spa Girls each week for an info-packed podcast filled with honest advice, tips, and resources. I'm Trudy J.
I'm Shab Barrett.
I'm Cheryl Phipps.
And I'm Wendy Bella.
And today we have an exciting guest with us to talk to us all about her subscription model. We've got Emilia Rose.
Yay!
Hi.
Hi, Amelia.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me. I'm very excited.
That's
Yay.
awesome. So we
excited.
saw a post on 20 Books which intrigued us, and we decided we needed to get you on to talk to us about your subscription model and how it's worked. I'm going to read a quick bio for you, and then we're just going to ask you how it all works and how and talk about your career. So here we go. Emilia Rose is an internationally best-selling author of contemporary and paranormal romance. Sorry, I missed out steamy. It's steamy. And contemporary romance. With over 18 million story views online, Emilia loves creating the newest and sexiest romances for her fans. Awesome.
Yay.
So let's just begin at the beginning. Like, what made you decide to get into writing? Where did you come from?
So I've been reading for like all my life. I remember when I was like younger, I would like make my mom read like a stack of like 10 children's books to me like every single night. But I started reading like really, really hardcore in high school. And then I started writing a little bit in high school as well, but then I sort of stopped once I got to college and I wanted to really focus on my studies. But then I needed kind of like a pick me up because I was like, I have all these stories like bouncing around in my head and all these characters. I really want to like tell their stories and like just enjoy them myself. So I started writing again a couple of years ago and started subscriptions, and it kind of just like kind of blew up, and yeah. And now I'm like writing full time. So that's where yeah.
So you started out on Wattpad, is that right? I'm curious about how that worked for you, and what made you choose Wattpad, and how did that go for you?
Yeah, so when I started reading actually like on my own, it was through Wattpad, and Wattpad has a lot of free stories. So I would just like read Wattpad, pretty much like werewolf romances, like steamy werewolf, and I loved it so much. And Wattpad is basically a free website where anyone can write and anyone can read on, and people share their stories. They're usually like not edited, very rough, and it has like a lot of like rabid fans who are like hungry for stories. Mm-hmm. So because I was familiar with like reading on the platform, I started writing on the platform as well. And I sort of, I just like built my following on there first, just releasing content for free.
And so how many followers did you get? Did you build up quite a big following, or is it just I don't know anything about the following numbers, so you have to educate us.
Yeah. So I actually started writing under my real name, and one of my stories became very popular very quickly. I think it has like, I want to say over 20 million viees.
Holy wow.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Oh my goodness.
Wattpad has a lot of fans on it and a lot of readers. Yeah. And so then I started under this pen name. I think I'm up to like 30,000 people who are following me on there, or around that number. Okay. But when I started my like writing and subscription, I had like not that many. I started very low.
Okay, awesome. And do you still post stuff on Wattpad? Sorry.
You go, Sha.
No, I was just going to say, what amazing feedback and what a encouragement that would be as a beginning writer, or as a beginning to publish on Wattpad, that would have been to have that many followers. Like, that's fantastic feedback from the start.
Yeah, that's exactly why I started publishing. Like when I started, I had like no confidence in my abilities to like write or like tell stories. And I was like, I'm just going to share the story because I want people to read it. If like one person reads it, like that's a win. But then like a lot of people started to read it, and I was like, oh, this is a lot of people like this story. Like a lot of people like my writing. And then my husband actually, he pushed me to start monetizing. didn't want to for the longest time. I was like, no, nobody's going to pay for the stories. They like reading them for free. I'll just keep them for free. But he eventually convinced me. And so, yeah, it was really encouraging to start.
Yeah.
20 million people can't be wrong.
Yeah.
That's so awesome.
So,
Thank you.
so when you first decided to do that subscription model, how did you do it? Like, how does it? There's obviously some kind of a paywall somewhere. How did that work?
Yes. Yeah. So basically, I came into it like as a reader first, and I was like, I really don't think it's fair to be releasing. So kind of going back, I release chapter by chapter, like every week. So the story is not completed when I start updating on Wattpad. I'll just like write the chapter, post it on Wattpad, see what people think, and then write the next chapter and post it the next week. And so that's how it was going for the longest time. And halfway through one of my stories, my husband was like, you should like monetize this some way. And I kind of felt like it was kind of backhanded to stop the story completely and say like, oh, you just have to pay for the rest of it. So I started early release model. So if people wanted to get one chapter ahead, they can join my Patreon, they can join my subscription, and they can read that one chapter a week before everyone else on Wattpad could, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no,
Nice.
it does, yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's how it started. Yeah. And it's progressed from there, but
Can I just ask, you talk about Patreon, which we know obviously, but you also talk about subscription. So to me, Patreon is a subscription service. So are you talking about another one as well as that, or is this a subscription on Wattpad?
I'm talking, Patreon is the subscription that I'm talking
Right.
about.
Right.
I just, yeah. There's a couple other like subscription platforms that people might be familiar with. So I just try to like lump it all into like subscriptions.
Right.
Yeah.
So was it
Thank you for that.
Patreon that you set up with right from the beginning? That's the one you've always been with?
That's the one I've always been with, but I'm going to be leaving there in a couple months, hopefully, just because Patreon right now has a lot of content restrictions. They won't say explicitly what they don't like in their TOS, but I've had multiple times where my account has been shut down because they just don't like the material that I'm writing. So I have to remove it, and then it just becomes a whole mess.
Yeah.
But yeah,
So
Patreon's
that's-
the most popular.
Yeah.
So that's because you write steamy.
Yeah, it's because I write steamy.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm curious about like when you do this early release model, so you're writing a chapter and then you get, so I'm really curious about the idea of getting feedback, so you get the feedback from people. So I'm curious, do you make changes based on that feedback and keep going? And do you know the story before you, like, so you're writing it chapter by chapter, do you know the whole story? Have you plotted it out, or are you just going, are you a pantser and going where it takes you?
Yeah, I'm not a plotter at all. If
Yes.
I plot my story, if I
Welcome.
plot my stories, like I have no motivation to write them. Like I like love knowing or not knowing what's going to happen next, because that's how I read. Like I love reading stories that like you don't know what's going to happen next. You're like left on a cliffhanger and you're like, oh my gosh, I need to know what's going to happen. And so that's how I write. I'm just like, oh, well, this thing happened, and I'll start writing the next chapter. I'll be like, oh, I did not expect that to happen, but I guess we'll roll with it. So that's how I write. Sorry, what was your other question that you had? Oh, was it feedback?
Yeah, the feedback.
Yeah.
So do you make changes based on readers saying don't like this, loved this, like?
Sort of, yeah. So I changed a book, or like even I'll change it or take back their feedback like 2 times in my editing process. One is when I'm actually like writing the story, I can see like based on people's comments if they're not liking the way something is going, and then I'll think about tweaking it a little bit or changing the way a character is acting. But again, I still listen to like my inner, I don't know, muse, I guess, when creating the story, because sometimes readers don't know what they actually want.
Yeah.
And then second, once the book is all complete, I did this for my first few books. I take back, or I look at every single comment in my books, and I'll revise the entire book before I publish it on Amazon based off of
Okay.
those comments.
Yeah.
So that
Yeah.
way, like, it could be the best book possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Can
And
I
so
ask the length of your books? How long are your books?
So usually my books are like 80 to 90,000. Some of them are shorter, and I have a couple of them that are way longer, but those are.
And so how long does that experience for you for writing that whole book? How long would that take you serializing it?
I'm not sure. A lot of my chapters are like 1,000 words long.
Mhm.
So if I were releasing like one chapter per week, it would be like 90 weeks. But I've been releasing multiple chapters a week sometimes. So it will take like 3-ish months. But to write it, it's a little different because I'm writing a bunch of stories at one time usually.
Okay.
Wow.
So when you're because we were just talking about this before and trying to figure out, is there a difference between, because you get serialization platforms, for example, like Radish, that I'm sort of a bit familiar with, where it's kind of like a almost episodic, almost like a television thing, where you kind of just have multiple kind of chapters or episodes or whatever, and it kind of goes on. It may be a slightly different format to a book where it's sort of the chapters. Do you just treat it like a book and you're just giving them chapters, or is there a different, do you think that there's a different format for serials in some cases? Like
So basically the way I create a book and a serial fiction story is basically the same way. Like if I were to write like a regular book, I would just like, that's how my chapters would be.
Yeah.
They would be like, they have the climax and then there's a cliffhanger at the end, because then you want people to continue to read into the next chapter. Like you don't want them to stop once like something has come together. But serial stories tend to have shorter chapters, like bite size, like 1,000 to 2,000 words, whereas some books can go on for a long time in their chapters, like 5,000 or more.
Okay.
So I hope that kind of answered your
Yeah,
question.
that's good. That clears it up actually, because I think it's awesome. And I did notice when I was looking on your website and reading all your blurbs and your stories, you've got really, I think maybe it's just natural in you, but a really strong sense of kind of like the tropes, but also like really hooky, like you're really good at kind of and also the
thank you.
Like and it's and I was actually curious about that, whether that's something that you sort of sat there and thought long and hard about, or whether it's just you picked the things that you loved and that just happens to be these amazing stories that pick up on the current themes. I don't know.
It's usually just what I like writing about. I always don't think I'm really good at blurbs, so thank you so much. That's really
No, you are.
No, you are.
Very
They
good.
were very good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, I hit buy on a couple of them because I was like, oh, these are great, you know.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
Okay. How does the pricing work? Can I just ask, how do you price a chapter? How does the subscription, model work on Patreon? What do you?
So subscription model, I'm basically pricing the entire month. So you get a month's worth of content for, I used to have my starting point at $3 a month, but now I just changed it this month to $5 a month. So if you join at $5 a month, you get access to basically right now, all the content I have minus a couple of stories. So they could, if they wanted to, they could read my entire backlist for $5, but chances are you're not going to get through my entire backlist in a month. And if you do, like, that's awesome. Like, cool. Like, you guys just read my entire backlist. You guys are probably like one of my fans. So
Okay. So they pay the $5. Is there just one level, or do you have higher levels?
I have a few levels now. So I have $5, $10, $25, $50, and $150.
Okay.
And they each have give more and more access. Yeah. And I could break them down if you want, but
somebody can go and look. Maybe.
Yeah. I'm just curious. Let's break down the $150 a month level. I'm curious.
I go around to it. Emilia cooks them dinner once a month.
No, the 150 is mostly for my international readers. They get access to everything in my lower tiers, as well as I'll send them a hardback or a hardcover book of each book I release as it releases, and it's signed and everything. And then they also have access to like other more exclusive stuff that I'm doing, like basically helps sort of. So like, for example, I'm making audio dramas right now. And I will give them access to like helping me choose which like voice actor I want to voice, or they want to voice certain characters.
Yeah.
Wow, that's cool.
So they feel
Nice.
part of the part of your
Yeah.
It's
decision-making
part of the
process.
group.
Yeah.
That's
You
awesome.
sound like you've got it really nailed. You sound like a real
Yeah.
smart cookie.
Very
Oh,
smart
thank
cookie.
you.
Very, very
So-
smart. Can I ask where you're moving to from Patreon? Just if that's
Yeah.
allowed?
So yeah, if that's okay. I'm actually starting my own with a couple friends. We're starting a subscription platform for authors called Ream.
Fantastic.
Wow.
What's it called? Sorry.
It's called Ream. REAM, like a ream of
Cool.
paper.
Right.
Yeah. And so my husband's actually like coding the whole website for us,
Oh,
which is really
wow.
awesome.
Wow.
That's cool.
Oh,
Well,
that's so cool.
congratulations. That's amazing.
Good for you. That's fantastic. And you guys can control the content. You don't. You know?
Yes. Well, hopefully there won't be any like control as Patreon and like tons
Exactly.
of like retailers have.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay.
That's awesome.
So if we
Really
talk
awesome.
about how it works, like, so if you've got a reader, so you put up your books once they're finished on Amazon, and you're selling on Amazon as well as
Yes.
through the subscription. Do you have a group for the people who are subscribers? Is there a place like a Facebook group or a Discord or something like that where they all meet and can connect with each other? Or is
Hang
it-
out.
Yeah, so there's some community features on Patreon. They have like commenting. It's not really built out that well. So I do have a Discord, but it's open to everyone. But I mostly promote it for my subscribers. So they do whatever they want in there. They post like not safe for work stuff if they want. Anything, memes. Or there's like specific channels where they can talk about each of my stories.
Okay.
And post like art or whatever. But I also have a newsletter specifically for serial fiction readers.
Okay. Yeah. And so do they need to be subscribed on Patreon, or is that again another avenue?
So it's like both. They don't have to be subscribed on Patreon. I have a Patreon gives you a list of people's or readers' emails when they join. So I add them all to an email list. And even if they decide they don't want to support me on Patreon anymore, they're still on that list. And I can be like, hey, if you want to join again, here is the new story that I just added, or something like along those lines.
Nice.
So can I ask, when you do you go to Amazon and go in KU, or do you go wide?
I go wide.
Oh yeah, I was going to say you'd have to go wide, wouldn't you? Because they've already published somewhere else.
Yeah.
I like my stories as many places as possible.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Nice.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to, I'm feeling like we're so you each week are you putting up a new chapter inside Patreon? Is that how they get access to the stories? And then once they're all together, you bundle it into the full book and then have it accessible via Patreon as well. So there's the two. So the main thing that people are getting is this early access. Is it still your main model? Yeah.
That's right now it's my main model. Yeah. Early access.
Are there other ways to do it, like that you've seen, or do you think early access is the best thing for authors?
So I've actually seen a couple different models. I know Kay Webster, she runs her Patreon right now, like a fan club, and she's giving like exclusive books or book covers in a couple of her tiers. She actually, I love her Patreon because she has a $200 tier, like and a $150 tier, and it's all sold out. Like you can limit the amount of people.
Wow.
It's all sold out. It's really cool. And she'll have like a sticker of the month and just cute little things like that. And she
Yeah.
promotes it like she doesn't have early access, I don't think, to any of her subscribers. And then Willow Winters, she's making a graphic novel, or she's made a graphic novel of her one of her books, and I believe she might do early access too, but she has like her not safe for work scenes available only on her Patreon, because I don't think the place where she posts the graphic novel allows not safe for work. So
Okay.
yeah, this is a place where they can find it.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay. So
I love this. I love this kind of, in a way, I guess it's working outside the boundaries, shall we say, of the traditional Amazon KU,
Yes.
you know, that kind of thing. And I love that women are taking this and just
Yes.
making it work, like, and taking it further and doing better than they would have had they probably tried to stay within those boundaries. I absolutely love this.
Yeah.
It's the
If you-
creativity of business as much as it is the creativity of the actual work itself. So kudos. It's awesome.
Very cool. So if someone just had one book, or they were starting to write a book, would you recommend they did something like that? Or do you think they should have a few books? I'm not sure if we covered this, but do you think you should have a few books behind you?
I don't think so. I think
Okay.
you should start it as soon as you start writing, just because if you start it right when you start writing, it's easier to train readers. Like once you already have like 4 or 5 books out, people are used to reading in KU. They're used to just getting that book for free, or just buying the book whole. But if you start, once you start writing your first book, you're training your readers like, hey, you can get a new chapter every single week. Like you could read the book before it's actually published. And it's a lot easier that way, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Do you
I
think?
agree.
Do you think it's because people found you on Wattpad and then you transfer them to Patreon, or do you think people are looking on Patreon? Like, how do you find the readers if you're just a new author? Do you think?
So for me, and a lot of people, it's definitely an outside source, because Patreon has really, really bad search engine. Like I'll search my name and my name won't even come up in the list until like the bottom. And especially if you write not safe for work or do anything not safe for work, your name is going to be at the bottom because they don't like prioritize that. So
It's
yeah,
like the
most of
Amazon
people-
dungeon, Patreon
I
dungeon.
know.
The same thing.
It's crazy.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, so most times it's outside sources. So like Wattpad, I know some people who write lit RPG, which is sort of like a new genre coming up. And they write on Royal Road. It's similar to Wattpad. People promote in their newsletters, on social media, and just places like that.
So do you have your serials on like Radish and other apps as well, or is it, what are you?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So if my story, if my story is for free, I don't post it. So I will take the story down before I post it on Radish, just because of their TOS. You can't have anything for free. The story comes down from Wattpad if it's getting published on Amazon or any wide retailers as well.
Okay. So is that your
Can I-
process? Sorry, is that so you put it up for free chapter by chapter on Wattpad still, and then early access via Patreon, and then once you've got the full story, you take it down from Wattpad and then publish it wide to
Yes.
Amazon and all the other places. And okay, oh, that's cool. All right. Sorry, Rochelle, what were you going to say?
So I'm just really curious, because I read in here and it blew my mind that you just put it up without any editing. Is that like absolutely true? Would you not do a second read through, like a second draft or anything like that? Or is it just purely I've written it, bam?
So I will write it and then I'll just read through it once just to get any typos, and then I post it. There's no like second draft or anything. It's just straight up like write it. Like I actually had an update today. I finished it like a few minutes before we started, and I wrote it. I went through it once and I was like, all right, here we go. So yeah.
And then
It's really crazy.
when you finish the book, the full book, do you then get it edited professionally, or is it just
Yes.
yeah, okay.
Yeah,
this
I
is
get
just-
it edited by an editor and then a proofreader as well before it goes on Amazon, because people on Amazon, they are a lot more vicious when it comes to like
Ruthless.
typos or they're so
They
yeah,
are
it goes
ruthless.
through.
Do you find that the people who are your subscribers on Patreon will then go and buy it from another platform, or is it they've already paid and how do they
So
work?
they are more likely to buy like a paperback or hardback cover once it releases. Some people will actually tell me like they bought the ebook version too, even though I give them the ebook version a couple weeks before. They're like, oh, I already pre-ordered it. And I was like, oh, thank you. You didn't have to, but thank you.
Yeah.
I think when people want to support you, they really do. They want to support you,
Yeah.
you know, and it's
Yeah.
really sweet. So can I ask, with the format, how do you deliver it to them in the subscription model? Is it as a converted file, an EPUB, or is it like, how do you deliver it?
So on Patreon, it's for me personally, I just make posts. So they have you can make like a text post, and so I'll just like copy the chapter from my Google Doc and post it into the text post, just because like it's so difficult to like create an EPUB every single chapter. Like that would get out of hand.
Yeah.
At least for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
that
when
makes
you talk
sense.
about people having access to the previous books via Patreon, do they just go and read chapter by chapter these posts, or do you create the file then when it's a full book? Or
so if I have published the book, they will get like a downloadable file, just because it's easier. If the book isn't published, it will be in post still.
Yeah. And I noticed on your website there's a couple of books that were Patreon only. So do you have some books that are just available in Patreon and nowhere else?
Currently, I do have a couple that are just on Patreon, but I will eventually bring them to other places. Like I'll eventually bring them to Wattpad or Radish or Wide. It just takes a while.
Busy.
Yeah.
You must be
I'm so busy. I'm terribly busy, but yeah. I love being busy.
Yeah.
Gives me something to do.
So, do you ever just publish books without serializing them, or is that the format for you? They just go there and then you publish them?
So that's just I don't think I've actually done that before, where I just publish it.
Right.
I definitely go through the whole model.
Yeah.
Hey,
That's cool. That's
if
really
it ain't
cool.
broke, don't fix it. Like,
Well, it's then your process, isn't it? So you know, you know what you're doing. And what are you charging for a book that you've put on wide platforms?
So it's usually $4.99.
Cool. Cool. Because they're quite big books, aren't they? If they're
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Cool.
So
That's so cool.
I had a question and now I've forgotten it.
Oh no. I hate when that happens.
Oh, and it was a good question. Okay.
So I've got a question. Just referring to what Wendy said about you being so busy. How do you kind of structure your time so you're dealing with this kind of the model, if you like, or the keeping all the wheels spinning on that, as well as you're actually creating the story, creating a, you know, how do you deal with it?
So I just have a lot of deadlines, and deadlines kind of motivate me. So like, as we were saying a little bit earlier, I have a deadline to post something on Patreon Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So usually I'm writing the chapters like the week before, or the day before, or the day of. If I slack off, it's the day of. But those actually, like, it motivates me to write and release, because I know people are like looking for the chapter. And if I didn't have that deadline, I probably wouldn't be producing as much content as I am. But I really love being able to work on a bunch of books and consistently have chapters coming out.
Yeah.
So how many will you have going in one time? Like, you're obviously not just writing one and putting that up. How many have you got on the go?
So I have 3 ongoing stories right now. And then I also post one one shot, which is like 1,000-word, like sexy story every single week. And it's like a different story every single week.
Wow.
Wow.
Oh.
You're a machine. That's all I got to say about that.
Yeah, exactly. And do you do any form of advertising?
I do Facebook ads, but a lot of my advertising and marketing, I kind of outsource, so I don't do it myself, just because I don't really like doing that kind of stuff.
Right.
So I will hire out for people to do it for me.
Cool.
But
Yeah.
the advertising is mostly for wide books. It's not for my subscription.
Yeah. Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, well, that makes sense.
And how does that work with you with Facebook being the fact that you're writing steamy?
Oh,
That must be an issue.
it is hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just like my the girl who does it for me, she'll like message me like, hey, like they removed these ads, they stopped them, we have to do something else. And I'm like, okay, well, here's another like sexy-ish snippet from my book. Try to use that. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
It's a nightmare, isn't it?
Facebook,
Oh my gosh.
Facebook, what a gem, eh?
I remembered a question that I was going to ask you. I was talking about the your fans that are obviously, so you've got this all the super fans on Patreon. How much interaction do you have with them? Are you posting and getting replies? Like, is there a sense of that community there, or is that
Yeah, so that's actually how I built like that's how I believe I built my Patreon up so high. Is when I started, I tried to respond to every single comment that I had on Wattpad specifically, as well as Patreon. Now it's gotten to the point where there are too many comments sometimes, so I will try to respond, but it's hard. It gets a lot more difficult the bigger your audience grows.
And so,
It's a
how many
terrible
fans?
dilemma to have.
I know, so many fans. How many people do you have on Patreon, just overall, if you don't mind me asking?
I think I have over 2,000 right now.
Wow,
I don't know the
that's
exact
awesome.
number.
Yeah, that's cool. And what percentage of your income is the Patreon versus the money that you're getting from having your books published on the other platforms?
I want to say it's a third.
Okay.
Right now it's a
Yeah.
third. It used to be like 60%. But the more books you have on Amazon, you tend to have more people reading them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
How many books have you got published now?
I don't know.
Tough question,
I want
eh?
to say, yeah, I stopped keeping track. My mom always asks me like, how many books do you have? And I'm like, oh, I don't know. Why don't you go count them on my bookshelf? But I think it's probably close to 20.
Yeah,
Nice.
That's
nice.
awesome.
Well done.
Good for you. And
Fantastic.
that's really
Yeah.
only like when did you first start this, Emilia? Was it a couple of years ago you said? Like
Yeah, I think it was like 2.5, 3 years ago now.
so just before the virus that
Yes.
shall not be named.
Mhm.
Nice
Yes.
little so the pandemic was enforced focus in some ways, wasn't it? You know, for a lot of us, it was sort of you can't go anywhere. So, you know,
That's right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So can we talk generically about like subscription models now? Like, if someone was wanting to start one up, like if they, what are some of the best practices? What are the things that you think they need to take into account? And one thing I'm curious about is, do you think it works best for books that are quite sexy or steamy, or do you think someone who has a sweet series could do just the same kind of thing?
I think you could do it with any genre, as long as you have if you're doing the early access model, as long as you have cliffhangers. You have to have
Yeah.
like really good
Mm,
cliffhangers for
right.
people want to join and continue.
Yeah.
But I think a couple best practices, and I think this is just like across the board, if you want to grow like anywhere, is just to focus on building your community.
Mhm.
A lot of people, I feel like they just like throw Facebook ads at their readers, but it's really, really valuable to like curate that relationship between you and them and really build like a strong bond, I guess. And one of those ways to do that is to build trust. And if you say you're going to like do something, if you say you're going to release a chapter every Monday, make sure you're releasing that chapter every single Monday.
Yeah.
If you say you can like only do one chapter a month, make sure you're doing that chapter a month.
Mm.
That's
Mm.
wise. Very, very good.
Yeah.
Yeah. That works for anywhere, right? Like anything that we're doing
Yes.
with authors,
Yes.
it's like consistency and building trust. Yeah. Is there anything like a mistake that you made that we can all learn from? I don't know.
Yeah.
Anything you did that you wish you hadn't?
Yeah, I'm definitely over promising. It's very easy.
So you
I
learned all
know.
that stuff from experience.
Yeah. It's very hard to overpromise. I mean, it's very easy to overpromise. Because like you don't like when I started, I didn't think anyone would join. So I was like, okay, so I'm going to release all this content to get people to join. But people just they didn't care. Like your biggest fans don't care like if you're producing like 10 chapters a week compared to 5 chapters a week. Like you have to do what's doable for you. And if you can't produce that much content, that's okay.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
just be honest with your readers on how much like you can do and like when you need a break and when you need to take a vacation or stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I think we're all like that, aren't we? We just like so scared of
Yeah.
not delivering, you know? So we
Yeah.
work ourselves
Yeah.
into the ground.
And it's interesting because when I think about my favorite authors, I would totally just join just to be nearer them, you know, like I
Yeah.
don't even, it's almost like I don't even need content. So when we think of ourselves, we've all got this imposter syndrome thing going on where we
Mhm.
think no one could possibly want what we want, what we're putting
Yeah.
out. So maybe just have a bit of confidence in ourselves and
Yes.
you know, people will come. if they-
1000%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you don't think it's just for steamy books? You think anyone could? Yeah, the cliffhanger thing is important. So that was
Yeah.
okay.
Very
Yeah, I
important,
think,
I reckon.
Yeah. And like lit RPG right now is another genre that's huge in subscriptions.
Okay.
So it could be done with stuff that's not steamy as well.
Yeah. I
Mm.
think it has to be something that has those cliffhangers. Like I can imagine
Yeah.
because lit RPG is all about the gamification, and you can
Yeah.
imagine
Yes.
that they're getting to some point in the story quite often where there's something big happened and they have to figure out their way to get out of it. So I wonder whether you
Mhm.
could do it with something like a family saga or something that doesn't have that kind of that's more of a slow moving kind of gentle, I don't know, story.
Yeah.
Might not do as well in the subscription model because people aren't like gagging for the next chapter. I don't know.
Well, there's like other things, like you don't have to do early access for subscriptions. Like you can add just something that's not early access. Like you might have like a game that people play and you can like play within the story. And then you can like play that game with your subscribers, or like if it's like a mystery, you can give clues to who. Like you can make your own mystery within your subscription and give people clues every week to help them like figure out who did what or something like that. I don't know. I don't
Yeah,
write
I like that.
mystery or
No. Yeah, there's other ways of doing it.
Sort of
My
thing.
wheel's spinning.
Yeah.
But that's
Like-
really good. That says to me that you're someone who thinks outside the square, right? And I think that's the point of
Exactly.
you're doing it this way because you've thought outside the square,
Mm.
and off the cuff you've just created these really good
Yeah.
ideas. So just
Exactly.
think outside the square in terms of subscription models, and you can come up with something that could work for you and your genre.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My sense is that the audience, so your average romance reader, I think they've researched this over decades, and it tends to be sort of 40 plus, if not 45 plus. My gut feel is that Wattpad and probably most of the subscription models are younger readers. Would you have that sense as well, Emilia?
Yeah, so my readers, a lot of them are younger. I mean, there's a range, obviously, because like a lot of times younger people don't have that much money to pay like a subscription every single month. So it does range, but there are some people who are on the younger end as well.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Wow, it's so cool. So there's so many now, isn't there? Like, you know, Radish, and there's so many.
Yes.
There is
So many places.
Would you, if you were writing a book and putting it on Radish, would you put it on others the same book, or would you use a different book on others? You know, I mean, does that make sense?
Yeah, I would probably I would probably put the same book on
Yeah.
everywhere.
Yeah.
Mm.
It just can't be
Just to
free,
get,
right?
yeah, as long as it's free, yeah,
Mm,
on Radish and other places as well.
yeah.
Because with
all the
Radish,
time,
it's another example of a platform where you put a chapter up or a couple of
Yeah.
chapters up every week or whatever. So when you're publishing do you publish to Radish? I think you said earlier. So do you just put
Yes.
the whole book up, or do you do drip feed it in that way as well, or how do you work that one?
So I when I started on Radish, I put the entire book up at one time, but I realized that didn't get as many eyes on the book. So I do drip now. So I have a couple chapters that come out each week. And I think the reason why like that model does so well is because like instead of like everybody getting like a rush one time, like when you release a book on Amazon, people will be with that book like for one day and then it'll be over and then the hype will die down. But if you're releasing like a new chapter every single week, people are going to come back every single week and they're going to continue to think about that story and the fandom's going to continue to build.
Yeah, I dipped my toe into Radish this year with a different pen name. It's very interesting actually, and the comments they're very interactive, a lot more interactive than anything else I've ever done. It's quite intriguing actually.
Yeah. So now I'm intrigued by how you release onto Amazon, for example. So or the other not serial platforms like Radish, but like say maybe Kobo and Nook and Apple and things like that. So do you do a launch, or do you just sort of put them up there, and like how have you built kind of a readership on those other platforms now that you've got the subscription model, or is it the same people buying, is there a connection?
So it's some people will buy the book, but there are new readers as well. I do have I do pre-orders for all of my books. I don't have to depend on a book doing very well on Amazon though, because like I have a subscription. Like a lot of times people will put everything on a launch and run a bunch of Facebook ads, but like with this model, you don't have to. Like it doesn't like obviously you want to do good on Amazon, but it's not like essential. It's not like so I do have a pre-order and I'll start running ads the day or week after the book launches, and we'll do some marketing campaigns, but yeah, it's not super important.
Yeah.
Sorry, does that answer your question?
Yeah.
It takes the pressure off. I mean, the pressure, I'm kind of putting myself in your shoes here. The pressure is the consistent delivery rather than maybe the pressure on a successful launch each book kind of thing. It's in a different place, if you like, in the process.
Does that, I'd be really curious if you see an alignment between the books that your readers on your subscription, the ones that they like the best, like maybe the ones that get most commented on, or that kind of thing. Are they the same books that do better on Amazon, or do you think it's a different?
For some of them, yes. Some of them it's like exactly like this book did very well on my subscription and on Wattpad, and on Radish it does very well on Amazon. Like my Submitting to the Alpha book, which is like a steamy paranormal romance, and I also have like this age gap best friend's dad romance too. That one does very well both places, but there are a couple books that did very well on Wattpad and Patreon that don't do as well on Amazon, which was very surprising to me, but the majority of them do.
They match up. Oh, that's interesting, It's sort of it's different audiences. I posted one thing to TikTok and one to Insta, a reel kind of thing, and on TikTok it's crickets and on Insta everyone loves it. So it's just different audiences for different places. It's so fascinating to me. So I think you said earlier that you didn't think that you wrote really good blurbs, and I think you wrote fantastic blurbs, full of all the things. So is there a way that you write them? Like, have you got a little technique or anything that you could share with us, or do you just blat it out?
I don't know what I did. I just like put it out there.
I love it.
Like my Submitting to the Alpha blurb, it's very steamy. It gets going right away, but I just like, I think I probably put that together in like 5 minutes, and I was like, okay, I guess this is kind of steamy. We'll see how it goes.
I love
So,
that.
yeah.
I
A
love
girl
that.
after my own heart.
Yeah, no, I love that. Just going back to what Trudy was saying about TikTok, do you do social media as well, Emilia?
Yes, I do. A lot of times my social media is run by an assistant, but I've been doing TikTok by myself. Unfortunately, yeah. Social media is just a huge time suck for me, and I don't particularly love
Agree.
it, but
Mhm.
I do it.
Mm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Awesome.
And
Amazing.
so do you think then, did you see a certain number of subscribers, when you hit a certain number of subscribers, that's when you started to make a decent living? Or do you think there's is there something that we should be aiming for when we first start a subscription service like this? Or is it just happy for one subscriber? Like, how do you think it should work?
So when I started, at least, I was happy for one subscriber, and I think my first subscriber was like a $10 subscriber, which was crazy to me. But now, I think a couple of weeks ago my husband was like, I was that first subscriber. Like I wanted you to, I know, he didn't tell me. I was like, what?
Oh, that's so sweet.
It's so sweet.
Oh, I'm
yeah.
glad you married him. That's
He sounds awesome.
You just like have to have somebody like believe in you,
You
and then you're like,
do.
oh.
You
So
do.
I don't think you should aim for any specific number of subscribers. I know like Kay Webster doesn't have a lot of people on her Patreon at the moment, but she is making like, I think like at least 5,000 a month with like a few subscribers.
Yeah.
And
That's
it's
awesome.
crazy, but it's definitely doable. Like you don't need to have like thousands of subscribers to make a living.
Exactly.
Where would you say the majority of your subscribers are? Are they lots of people at the smaller tiers, or do you where do you?
Yeah. So before I switched to the $5 tier, most of my subscribers were in the $3 tier, and then my second highest tier was the $10 tier.
Yeah.
Okay.
It seems to be usual, doesn't it?
That seems.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So do you still have the $3 one, or did you just put it up kind of thing to $5? Like, how do you deal with people that are already on that lower level?
So they stay at that lower level unless they want to support at a higher level. But basically, the tier is unpublished, which means nobody else can join it.
Got it.
And if people leave, then they have to join the $5 tier.
Gotcha.
Right.
Yeah. Nice.
So now they're too afraid to leave because they
Yeah.
can't come back.
Nothing wrong with that.
So I'm just trying to think what else. Are there any other tips or any other things that you think people need to think about if they want to do a subscription like you've done?
Oh, I don't know. I think just the other big thing is just be consistent. Be consistent, be trustworthy, build your community. I think those are the three big things with subscriptions, because like the people who are joining and paying you monthly are going to be your biggest fans, and you don't want to obviously don't want to let them down, and you want to be really open with them.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
So I've got a couple of questions about process. Do you have the book cover ready to go, like kind of from the start once you start publishing the chapters, or is that at the end of the
That's usually at the end. Sometimes I'll have them before. That's very, very rare. So when I have them on Wattpad, I'll just like make up like a random cover and just on Canva or something. And my official covers, they come usually right before actually I put the pre-order up.
Yeah. And how long do you run the pre-orders for, Amelia?
Usually as long as possible. Sometimes 6 months, sometimes less, but it just depends on when. When I started, I would just put the pre-order up while I was continuing to write the book, but it was just too much pressure for me. Yeah. So I started to once I finished the book, then I put the pre-order up.
Nice. Yeah.
Okay.
That makes sense. And I'm a a paper planner girl. How do you manage, like, you've got lots of deadlines and dates kind of things working here with, you know, Radish and all the different platforms? Are you working on Airtable, on Excel? How do you manage all of that?
I just have my notes app.
Nice.
My notes app on my phone. It's just
I
all
love
in
it.
there. It's literally crazy, but it's easy for me. I just downloaded Airtable though, like yesterday, so I might switch to that.
Again, though, it's what works, you know, and it's clearly worked
Yes.
really well for you. So you've got to go with what works for you. I think that's, for me, is the big lesson from this, is that you're just embracing what works for you. And I absolutely
Mhm.
love that. So go
Yeah.
you.
And I guess if part of your process is being consistent, you just know. You don't even have to look at your phone. You just know that today you have to do
Yeah.
this.
Yeah, that's pretty much how it's become.
Yeah.
I don't even like the updates I have, like for Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. They don't go in my to-do list or anything. I'm just like,
Mm.
oh, it's Monday. I have to write this.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Monday, Wednesday, Friday is 3 different stories. Is that right? So you're doing,
yes,
or is that just same? Yeah. So the 3.
it's 3
stories.
different stories.
Yeah, that you're working on. Oh my gosh.
Wow.
I know.
Blows my mind. You must have lots of the ability to concentrate on 3 different stories is a skill by itself, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
And to keep those cliffhangers, like to keep the hooks and the cliffhangers for 3 different stories, like, man, I tell you, your brain must be just like a Ferrari engine. Mine is
It's
more
all
like
over
one
the
of those
place.
beat up old V-dub Beatles from the 19th. I'm so impressed.
so
On that note,
how do you decide?
We'll
I just
have-
want curious. I just want one more question. How do you decide what you're going to write next? Like, is that just is it the same kind of thing, whatever you feel like, or are you?
So, so those one shots that I mentioned earlier, usually, once I'm finished with a book and ready to write the next book, I'll ask all of my subscribers, which story out of this list of one shots do you want to read next? And they'll vote on it. And usually the one they vote on is going to be like the most popular once it gets published too. So which is, it's
Wow.
kind of cool. Like your
Fantastic.
fans are in the creative process with you.
Yeah, it's
Nice.
like market
Nice.
research, live market
Yeah,
research,
yeah.
or audience
That's
research.
Awesome.
So where you writing your books, are they standalones or are they series, like once it's completed?
Usually series. But they're like, I've been going from like series following the same characters to series of standalones,
Right.
which is
Right.
more doable for me. I've realized that writing long series with the same 2 characters kind of gets boring,
Yeah.
at least for me
Amen,
personally.
amen.
So yeah, I've been writing a lot of standalones that are in the
Mhm.
same world.
Yeah. Okay.
Nice.
Yep.
Do you do
Okay.
Easter eggs? Is that something like, like where you put something in a book and then it's maybe something only your super fans would notice, or is that's
I don't know. Like I do like my recent series, it's an high school academy series, that has a lot of crossover. So my fans love seeing that. There's like specific scenes that are in like all the books.
yeah.
But yeah, and nothing like super small that only subscribers would get.
Yeah.
At least I don't think so. I'll have to ask them.
Wow. Yeah, go back and ask. That's awesome. I don't have any more questions.
I think that's
We're-
great.
I think
We've,
that's great.
I
yeah,
have no
just-
questions, but a lot of admiration.
Yes,
So congratulations
yes,
to
well
you,
done.
just on your
Amazing.
savvy and your entrepreneurial spirit, and
Absolutely.
I
Yeah.
absolutely love it.
Yeah.
Love
So
it.
good.
That's
Thank
awesome.
you.
And so much of the way
Oh,
you've done
thank you
things
so
is
much.
just so well thought out, right? Like I
Mm, yeah.
get the feeling that it's
amazing.
just part of who you are. That's awesome.
Yep.
Yeah. So if
Thank
someone
you
wants,
so much.
if someone wants to go and look you up and find you, where's the best place to go?
Probably my website. It has links to almost anywhere, which right now it's emiliarosewriting.com.
Okay. Is it going to change in the future? Is that
Maybe it might change to author Emilia Rose, or possibly Emilia Rose Studios as I branch out into a
Yes.
couple other things.
Love that.
exciting?
We'll
Yeah.
see.
Go there.
Wow. Wow,
Yeah.
that's
We'll want to
exciting.
hear
Wow.
about that when it comes to pass.
Yeah. We would like the
Definitely.
first dibs on that one. We would like Patreon level priority. Thank you very much.
Definitely. You guys are first.
Okay, cool.
Yay.
That's so cool.
And
Thank you.
Shah, where can we be found?
And we can be found on Patreon too. If you just type in patreon.com/Spa Girls podcast, and that gives you the $10 a month tier gives you access to our mastermind group. But there's other tiers as well. If you would like to buy us a coffee, we would be hugely appreciative of that too.
Yes.
That's awesome. So thank you so much, Emilia Rose, for joining us today. We've really enjoyed our chat. You can see, by the way, we've been peppering you with questions. But for now, that's it for this week from the Spa Girls. We'll see you again next week, but farewell.
Keep
Bye.
well. Bye.
Bye.